Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commands and commands us to engross ourselves in words of Torah. All right, today we are here. We are in Joshua. Following the little timeline, we're going to be doing chapters 18 and 19, and then next week is going to be kind of an interesting one because we're going to be talking about the cities of refuge and the Levitical towns and what all that meant. And so the next week will be a real interesting stuff, interesting lesson. So let's go ahead with, here's my map that shows the different ones and their inheritance. And today we're going to be looking at Simeon, Dan, Benjamin, Zebulun, Issachar, Ashar, and Naphtali. Going to the first couple of verses there. Then the whole congregation of Bnei Israel assembled at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there, after the land was now subdued before them. Yet there remained among Bnei Israel 7 tribes that still had not received their portions. All right, now, Shiloh is important because that's where they brought the tabernacle up from Gilgal when they first went into the land. And Shiloh then actually became the capital of Israel because that's where the tabernacle was. It became basically the capital of Israel for a little over 300 years. I think maybe 305 years or something like that. So it was important. And another thing that's important in these verses here is said that the land was subdued. Now that meant that for the most part, all the major fighting was done. The Israelites, the various tribes, now were responsible for cleaning up their own territories, as it were. That the rest of Israel was pretty much all major enemies had been either scattered, killed, or they'd surrendered, as in the case of Gibeon and so forth. So really there were no excuses now for the tribes to not drive the Canaanites out, because there was really no major resistance against them whatsoever. And but they hadn't done that. In fact, it was a case of they had been in war for 7 years, and then now we're at this point. Some of the commenters here saying that this is now 7 years after that they were finishing off the divvying up the land. So it was, depending on who you read, it could have been up to 14 years from the time that they first crossed the Jordan River and until now that all of the tribes had their land given to them. And I don't know if how they figure that time frame in there, because the Bible is kind of silent on that. But anyway, that's we're seeing these last 7 tribes now they had not gotten their inheritance. They'd been living down there in Gilgal on the Jordan River, and just they were okay because they had the spoils of war, that they had taken from the various cities that they had actually, they'd conquered. And so, they were living the life kind of relative ease, I guess you would say. And so they were not really all that interested or motivated, I guess is the word. They were not all that motivated to um, uh, get out there and take the land and do with what they need to. Well, my two grandsons just walked in the door, and one of them he just about had to duck to get under the door. He's so tall. So anyway, I'll do my greetings to them in a little bit. So, all right, now I had forgotten to ask anyone if they had any comments or questions before on all of this stuff. And if you do, you know how to do that. You just unmute yourself and ask away. So now here's a picture of Shiloh as it is today. And they say that this, I don't know if you can see my hand, the little electronic hand right here. But they say this was the location of the tabernacle for 300 years. And then David moved it from, David started the process. Then Solomon actually culminated in Solomon's temple, moved the tabernacle from Shiloh, and then it went on to Jerusalem. Of course, now the Philistines had come in here and they'd captured Shiloh or Shiloh and taken the Ark of the Covenant. But that's another story that we'll get into when we get into the book of Judges and First and Second Samuel. And here's some of the things that you see from Shiloh. Here's some an olive press there, and a whole bunch of other things. Of course, these stones right here are part of the weights that they would use to, if you've ever seen the olive presses that they had back then, that you would have the olives down in here, and then they'd put a big stone over the top of it, and one end of a tree trunk would be stuck in the stone over here in the rock someplace, and then they'd put these weights on them, kind of like a fulcrum thing, and it would just press the olives down, and that's how they smashed the olives and got the olive oil out. So let's go ahead. Verse 3, so Joshua said to Bnei Israel, how long will you be slack about going in to possess the land which Adonai, the God of your fathers, has given you? Okay, so Joshua's giving them what for here? Calling them a bunch of slackers and say, how long are you going to do that now, you guys? And so he's really getting after them for doing that, and he's urging them on. He says, go and take your land, and let's get this done. Let's finish this out. Because plus, Joshua's getting kind of long in the tooth there, and so at that point he's wanting to get this done. Now it also talks about he says, possess the land which Adonai, the God of your fathers, has given you. And so he's pointing back to the covenant. He's pointing back to the promises of God. And so that promise, that's the basis. That is their basis for taking the land. And so that's he's really giving them a good stern talking to about, let's go ahead and get this stuff done. And he says, appoint for yourselves 3 men from each tribe, and I will send them, and they will arise and walk through the land and describe it according to their inheritance, and then return to me. Now, okay, so he's sending 3 men from the 7 tribes. So there's a total of 21 men from the 7 tribes. And these guys, these were just not any ordinary men. These were people who were probably very skilled at geography and surveying, and they were only looking at the land that that was up for allotment, because of course, Judah had their land already. Manasseh, Ephraim had their land. Gad and Reuben, they had their land, and so um, they're only looking for stuff that had not yet been given up for allotment. And so going ahead, this is there to divide it into 7 portions. Judah will remain within its territory in the south, and the house of Joseph will remain within their territory in the north. After you've described the 7 portions of land, bring the description here to me. Then I will cast lots for you here before Adonai our God. But the Levites have no portion among you, for the priesthood of Adonai is their inheritance. Also Gad, Reuben, and the half tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan eastward, which Moses, the servant of Adonai, gave them. All right, so here we have Joshua. He's repeating again some of the things that we already knew, that the Levites had no portion. They're not going to get an inheritance like everybody else was. And then you've got the the Gadites and the Reubenites, and they were over on the other side of the Jordan River, on the east side of the Jordan River. They had theirs, and so did Manasseh have their part. Remember, Manasseh had a double portion, and so they had a big bunch of land on the east side and some on the west side of the Jordan. Now, several times here, the Bible says that Joshua cast the lots, but the way that the lots were done, and the Urim and Thummim and so forth that we've talked about, there's a problem with that, in that it was probably done by the high priest, and it just at the direction of Joshua, that these lots were cast, because God did not authorize a lot of the divination, that sort of thing, and only this business of the Urim and Thummim was allowed for them to go and do their ask their questions. Okay, and it was a yes and no question. Always had to be a yes or no question for the Urim and Thummim to work, because it was, like I've explained before, two rocks or 2 sticks or 2 somethings of equal weight, they had the same feel to them and so forth, and but they were possibly a different color, and so the high priest would stick them in this pocket in his breastplate, and reach in and pull one of them out, and whichever one came out, it was deemed to have been directed by God. So, we see that. All right, that's kind of what this casting of lots would have been. All right, so let's see. I'm getting down past my notes here. I keep jumping out ahead of my notes. The idea that that Judah is going to be down on the south. What he's just saying is that, look, Judah's got their land. Manasseh and Ephraim have their land. So does Gad and Reuben. But okay, we're going to divide the rest of it. And remember, the Levites, they don't get any land. So they went ahead, and the men passing through the land described it in a scroll, town by town, in 7 parts. Then they came back to Joshua at the camp at Shiloh. All right, so these guys, they went through and divided up the land according to its value and the worth of the cities which it contained, into 7 equal portions. Now, this was not easily done, and so this required some men who were very educated. They had an ability to do surveying. So these guys, they would have had um, geography and geometry in their training, and so that was something that they would have had to have something like that to do the surveying that they did. And so Josephus said that these guys were experts in geometry, and that's why they could do the survey. So you really wouldn't have some nincompoops going out there and doing this. These were highly educated men, leaders, and so forth. Joshua probably sent along some security for them just in case, but the land was subdued, and so they were able to go and do their what they were supposed to do. And this is, as best I can remember, this is the first mention of any kind of land surveying in the Bible. You had some, when the spies went through the land, they checked it out, they described it, so forth. But to go in and then set up boundaries, this is the first description of that in the Bible that I know of, that I can remember. Okay, so let's go on and read some more. Then Joshua cast lots for them at Shiloh before Adonai, and there Joshua apportioned the land to Bnei Israel according to their divisions. Now the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin came up for their clans. The territory of their allotment lay between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. Okay, now let's again, I want to say that the high priest probably was the one that cast the lots, and as it turned out, Benjamin got the first lot, and in his lot was the city that eventually became known as Jerusalem. And so very, very important. And at the same time, Benjamin was kind of right there on the edge of and around Judah, and they just kind of got absorbed in a way into Judah, never losing their identity, but they kind of diminished in importance and so forth. So here's some pictures of some of the allotments, and the first one we're talking about here, of course, is Benjamin, and you see where that is. And they've got Jerusalem here. They've got Jericho, which Jericho was a very important place. And so this is where Benjamin was. All right. And here's an interesting thing. Just before we talk about all the divvying up these things, here's an interesting slide that talks about the relative area of land, the estimated size of the inheritance land of each of the tribes. Of course, Manasseh got the, you talk about Judah being the most important and so on and so forth. Well, Manasseh got most of the land by more than double what Judah got. And again, that's because Manasseh had been given the double blessing by Jacob. And so it goes all the way down, each one of these that Ashar ends up with 200 square miles, and Levi, he rolls snake eyes. He doesn't get anything. They were given some cities, and we'll talk about those next week. But Levi was given no land. The only thing that they had was that in the cities that they were living in, designated, they could have about a 1,500-foot strip around the cities, so that they could at least graze some of their goats and sheep and have a garden, an orchard, or something like that. Certainly, it was only enough for their own personal maintenance and sustenance. It was not something that they could actually make a living from selling produce from this. It would not have been enough. All right, so going ahead. And again, if anybody's got any questions on any of this stuff, just jump in there, and we'll come up with try to answer your questions. Joshua 19. I'm just going to read the first and then the ninth verse. Then the second lot came out for Simeon, for the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their clans. Now their portion was in the midst of the portion of the children of Judah. And then we jump down to verse 9. It says, the inheritance of the children of Simeon was taken out of the allotment of the children of Judah, for the portion of the children of Judah was too much for them, so the children of Simeon had inheritance within Judah's inheritance. Okay, now Simeon was given, okay, here it is down here, okay. And I'll tell you, I've been down there in that part of Israel, and unless it was different, 3,500 years ago, they didn't get a real good deal on that. There, at Beersheba, there's a nice well that Abraham dug, and it's still there today, the same well, and it still has water in it, and so forth. But the surrounding area of there is really, really dry, and unless they can irrigate it in some way, it makes it very difficult to scratch a living out of that area. But perhaps 3,500 years ago it wasn't so. All right. Let's see, that Simeon was given like 17 cities and their surrounding villages here. Okay, now there were, if you look at this, it's a little unusual when they're describing in Leviticus, in the Joshua 19 here. It doesn't give any boundaries at all. There's no, yeah, you go over here to this river and you run east to this mountain and you go south to this town and back. No, it doesn't say that. It just says they list 17 cities, and it just 17 cities, and it says and their surrounding villages, and this is unusual among all of the other tribes, because all the other ones had boundary lines. The Dead Sea was a boundary for Judah on the east, and you know what I'm talking about. It goes down to the river of Egypt, which was the Wadi al something. I can't remember it, but it wasn't the Nile. Okay. All right. So what they say about this is that this is actually a prophetic, in that Simeon, it was prophesied that they were just going to diminish and just kind of fade away as a viable entity, because of the treachery that Simeon and Levi perpetrated on the men of Shechem. And if you don't remember that story, the prince, the crown prince of Shechem, had he liked Jacob's daughter Dinah, and they basically he saw her and because he was a prince and he could do it, he had his way with her. Okay. And so the brothers heard about it, and so they went to them, and they were mad, and the prince said, "Well, look, I really love her," and he says, "Okay, if you love her, then we can't give her away to an uncircumcised dude. You and everybody in your town here has to be circumcised." And so the prince really wanted Dinah, and so he says, "Okay, we'll do it." So he gave the word for all of his men. Okay, you got to do the deed, and so they all did. And about the third day, when everybody was so sore that they really couldn't, they were in no shape to go out and do anything. Then uh, Levi and Simeon went in there and killed all the men in this town. So that was not a very nice thing to do. And so anyway, it was prophesied then in Genesis 49:7 that Simeon was just kind of, they're going to go away. It's just they're going to be out of their inheritance eventually, and they would just kind of fade out of the picture. Of course, Levi, they had a different picture. They had no inheritance, but it was for different reasons, and then they still uh, garnered favor with God because of their stand at the golden calf around Sinai. All right, any questions? All righty then. Going on now, we're going to get into these other tribes, and I'm not going to read this whole thing because oh man, it's just full of hard names that I look at them and I just my eyes cross and everything. So I said, "Nah, we're not going to read all those." And it comes up that here's the remainder of the tribes. Zebulun. Okay, now where do we find it? Zebulun is right here in this area here. Zebulun is located in the Galilee. Now, it had Ashar up here as on its western side, Naphtali on the north and east side, Issachar a little bit on the south and east side. Of course, Manasseh down here on the south. And the Isaiah describes, now in the description here, they list the city of Bethlehem. Now that's not the same Bethlehem as the Bethlehem. Oh well, okay, down further south. The city of where David's city, or David's the birthplace of David, and the birthplace of Yeshua. Different Bethlehem. So Isaiah describes Zebulun as shrouded in darkness because of Assyrian oppression. And but it says he will see a dawning of a great light, and that's in Isaiah 9:1 and 2. And Matthew then says that this was fulfilled by Yeshua's ministry in the Galilee, because Yeshua he himself was the light of the world, and because of his ministry here in the Galilee, it brought light to the territory of Zebulun. All right. So then the next one that they talk about is Issachar. All right. And again, they have a whole bunch of hard names that like there, and I was looking at one of them. I said, "Man, how would you like to have this name, Shazam, living in the city of Shazam?" But no, it wasn't. It was Shahazim. And so I said, "Oh shucks, okay." I was thinking that there might be a Shazam there. So Issachar drew this portion, and actually it had some of the best land available. If you've ever been out there, you know, I mean, that's agricultural land. Is beautiful. It's perfect. They've got the Jordan River here that they could use for. You know, that area had water if you were close enough to the river, and so it was just really, really good. They lucked out on this. Now, some scholars say that, well, the reason that you never hear of Issachar anymore is because these guys got complacent. They got this great land, and all they did was just sit there and farm and eat tomatoes. And they weren't really interested in going out and doing anything great, anything of value. Well, I'm not convinced that that would be a good reason, but there's always some commentator that's trying to put something negative down on people. So going ahead in, here's, I want to go ahead and look at some of these. Zebulun in the Galilee, and then Issachar, they lucked out. The next one is Ashar. Now, Ashar, they got the coastline, and again, that's pretty good land around on there too. You know, you drive through that area of Israel and you're heading up to Haifa or something like that, and the land is just really nice. There's a lot of produce. I mean, there's date trees, pineapple trees, banana trees especially. There's pineapple trees, pineapple plants, and banana trees. Okay, I'll get it straight in a second. But I mean, it's great land as long as you can irrigate it. If you can get some water to it, that stuff really just blooms. And of course, Israel has perfected the idea of water reclamation. They've got some of the best water desalination plants in the world, or the best in the world, in fact. So, but they Ashar got the coast and so forth, but they did not drive out the Phoenicians at Akko and Sidon, and so that was kind of a problem for them. Now, I don't know. Ashar, there's a in Jacob's blessing of his children, he says that Ashar would dip his heel or dip his foot in oil. And, you know, that's kind of been the guiding light for, there's this U.S. oil and gas, or U.S. based oil and gas exploration company that I'm not going to mention their name, but you know, they started by some preacher from Oklahoma decided that this deal of Ashar was going to dip his foot in oil, meant that someplace in the original allocation of Ashar that they were going to hit it big time with oil. Well, they have been drilling out there for 30 years now, and they have had absolutely no success whatsoever. Never had a producing well, you know, one that was commercially viable. Pete, you got your mute off. You got something to say?
I'm trying to decide if you're going to let me tell them who it was.
I'm not going to say. If somebody in my class were to say it, then that's fine.
Zion Oil.
Yep. I have gotten into big arguments with the directors of Zion Oil regarding their exploits and so forth. So I finally just decided I'm not gonna you know, I mean, they almost shouting matches with some of them. So I said, you know, it's not worth it, you guys. I can look and see 30 years of failure, and so no, I'm not going to be investing in Zion Oil and Gas. Exxon, Chevron's a much better bet. But you know, for as far as what that goes, there are the gas fields off the coast of Israel are absolutely, the quantities there are of, excuse the pun, biblical proportions. So before I left the oil business, um, I was in negotiations with going out and starting a company in Israel that would be servicing some of the oil and gas industry, the gas industry anyway, offshore of Israel, and then it never did come to fruition. You plow when you're doing those kind of jobs. You plow a lot of ground before you get a plant to come up. So, but Zion Oil and Gas, not in my estimation, not one of the better investments in oil and gas production.
So between the Tamar field and the Leviathan field, they probably are looking at 25 trillion cubic feet of gas, enough for 100 years of energy for the state of Israel. And the state of Israel only wanted to keep it in the country. Noble Energy wanted to export it. They've been battling back and forth for many years about, Noble wants their money now and Israel wants the gas. So they finally come to some conclusions. So Leviathan is actually moving forward now.
Well, that's a good deal. And I had read, I heard a prophecy teacher years ago saying that part of the Ezekiel 38 war and then the Armageddon and all that kind of stuff, the future wars for against Israel were going to be fought over oil and gas. And of course, when I heard this back in the 50s and 60s, I just looked at that. Even as a kid, I looked at that and I said, this guy is nuttier than a fruitcake. There is no oil and gas anywhere around Israel. And little did we know that right offshore, it's some of the biggest, richest oil gas fields in the world. And so the old guy, he heard from the Lord on that one, that's for sure. But Zion Oil and Gas, not so much. All right. And I hope I don't get sued by them for just saying that. All right. Naphtali. There's not much to say about Naphtali. I mean, they occupied the Galilean highlands. They lived quietly without really warring against their neighbors and their enemies. Like Jacob in his blessing of them says, Naphtali is like a doe set free, and it's just like something that it's not a threat to anybody. Everybody likes you, and so that's kind of the way that their tribe lived. And in today's world, and some of that area that they've got, they got some of the best wineries in all of Israel. So that it wasn't a bad place, and there's some beautiful territory. Now, then there's come up with one that was kind of interesting, I think, for me, is that the tribe of Dan. All right, and Dan. Let's see if I got a. Okay. I don't have it. I went through all of those things. Okay. This green spot here is Dan, and you'll see. Okay. This green spot here, that's Dan. And so you can see that Dan sits right up the north of the Gaza Strip. Well, guess what? The Gaza Strip was a tough place. It was a tough neighborhood 3,500 years ago. And it wasn't because of Palestinians. It was because of Philistines. Okay. And So Dan, it says that their inheritance. It was an interesting way that the Bible talked about it. It says the territory of the children of Dan slipped away from them, so that the children of Dan went up and fought against Leshem and captured it and struck it with the edge of the sword, possessed it and settled in it, and called Leshem Dan after the name of their ancestor. So, um, this, and it says this is the inheritance of the tribe of Dan. All right, so it's kind of interesting. Now here's Tel Dan. Okay, here is the city. Now, it was already. It's kind of interesting because it was already a city up there called Dan, and then the tribe of Dan. So you can go up there, and we've been up there. It's really nice area up there. I mean, it was the river Dan feeds from Mount Hermon, which when we were there still had snow on it, and the snow melt was going through there, and they had the river was the streams were really full. There was an old mill there, and it was lush, it was cool, it was wonderful, and we really I really enjoyed it. And um, I was looking around this evening, and I can't find the disc or whatever I had on. I have some pictures of us sitting here at the gate right here at Dan, right under this, actually right under this tree here. And then on the other side, right over here, you can see where my little hand is here. Is this thing here? It's covered over. What they've done is they built a structure over the top of this part of Dan, and this would have been the active gate. You can actually see where this would have been the original gate, but it was from how when Abraham was alive. Okay, and so you got hundreds and hundreds of years earlier than Abraham would have come, and he would have come right through this gate. When his nephew Lot was captured, and he took off with some of his men, and he fought against all of them, and he got his nephew back. And I just thought it was kind of interesting that this is the gate right here where Abraham actually would have gone through when he came to the city of Dan. All right. And so then when they finished allotting the land for inheritance of his borders, Bnei Israel gave a portion to Joshua, son of Nun, in their midst, according to the command of Adonai. They gave him the city that he requested, Timnath-Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim. So he built up the city and lived in it. And these are the portions which Eleazar the Kohen and Joshua son of Nun and the heads of the ancestral houses of the tribes of Bnei Israel distributed for an inheritance by lot in Shiloh before Adonai at the entrance of the tent of meetings. So they finished apportioning the land. Okay, and that's kind of the end of it. And we see that Joshua, like Caleb before him, Caleb had requested. He said, "I want Hebron. I really want that." And he says, "Remember," he says, "I'm 85 years old and I can still unleash a can of bad stuff on the Philistines there, and the Nephilim, and the all of those different giants or whatever they were." He said, "I can still whoop them pretty good." And he did. He ran them off and he settled that land. Josh was saying the same thing. Ephraim, even though it's in the heart of Ephraim, the territory of Ephraim, they say that this city, Timnath-Serah, had yet to be fully subdued. So Joshua went in there and took it, subdued it, and then it says he built it up, and it was his possession. And so with that, Joshua gets his part. Now, and that's the lesson for tonight. Next week we will be talking about um, the Levitical cities and the cities of refuge